peace. They use interesting words, comprehend and know. How does someone comprehend serenity?
They feel it.
Yeah, if you look at serenity in the dictionary, it will say, see serene. They don't try and describe the state of being to you. You can see what a serene state looks like, and then the state of serenity is found somewhere within that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
How does one know peace?
You feel it.
I mean, if you have found there's less conflict within you.
Especially in my mind.
Yeah. Precisely right. If there's no conflict in your thought life, if there's no conflict in the way you're thinking and feeling, any of you ever felt a certain way and then said to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way? Isn't that uncomfortable?
Yeah.
How the hell else should you feel in the way you feel? Right? Okay. So no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others.
Yep.
Why?
We listen to our sponsor go through step 5 with us.
How many of you thought that terrible experience that happened to you, that somehow you got through and you've been able to help walk somebody else through? And you didn't even have to hear them describe it to sort of know what they were talking about.
Yep.
Because we're sharing states of beings now. We're talking to them in the spirit, right? Okay. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Why will that happen?
We've been reborn.
Nice.
Right? That's what they told us in step 3. If you sincerely take such a position and hold us to promises, and one of them was, we're reborn. Right? So now you're a new creation.
Yeah.
Okay? Alright, so fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. How many of you have noticed that? That you're able to show up, stand up, speak up. How many of you had lost that ability?
Yeah.
Or maybe you never had it?
Yeah.
Okay? How many of you have started paying your bills? Will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. When we say God, what do you say? Power. So this tangible power that we encountered in 2 is now more tangibly expressing itself through me. Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So it says, are these extravagant promises?
Yes.
Yep.
They are extravagant. Especially from where we start.
Yeah.
But why did they call that to our attention?
Because by then it isn't.
Because they are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they always materialize if we work for them. They're telling you that freedom is yours too, and even though we were what we told you we were, what we were like, once we had our encounter, here's what we're like now.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So, then it says, this thought brings us to step 10. So what thought?
Promises.
That the promises will always materialize, and I won't regret the past. How many of you are full of regret for the past? To a person, probably all of us, right?
Yeah.
Self-loathing, guilt, shame, and remorse. How many of you just wished when someone said, that can change, you can be new, you can be made new, you can be made clean, and you just dared to hope that could be for you? How many of you found it's true?
That's true.
Yeah.
It absolutely is true, isn't it? How many of you are feeling that? Who's feeling that? That's the power we call that. That's not happening up here. That's happening in you. Cool. That was the signature. I'm telling you, just keep trudging. Okay? Alright, so, which suggests, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. So I'm going to continue. When did I start?
Step 4.
Yeah, they showed me how to take personal inventory when they showed me how to do step 4. And that I continue to set right new mistakes. So if I'm going to continue, when did I start? They showed me how to do that when I made my step 4 inventory, got my 8-step list for my inventory, and I started going out. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue doing what I already started, back to Sean's point. Where am I in the promises? I've learned the practices of 4 through 9. Now I'm going to get disciplined in them.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
So then it goes on to say, we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Right? We always want you to know the steps are not a workbook exercise, it's a manner of living. So now that I've learned the practices, I need to get disciplined in the practices so I can walk consciously in the world.
Yep.
Conscious of what? Aware that I'm aware of what? Of who I am and whose I am.
That's right.
Because then I walk in victory.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you have been walking in victory and then felt less so? So we've got to remember that there's a discipline to the practice and continue as we go along. So it tells us we can vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So since we started your amends, the big amends is 12. Did they ever tell you that? The amends in 9 is preparing you to be fit enough to go into that attic scene and get them out without telling them what they should do. Their faults are not discussed. If you're trying to surrender the ego and go as an ambassador to the power of the century. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So then it has a promise for us. We have entered the world of the Spirit. So what's it like to have entered the world of the Spirit?
Serene and joy.
We go back through the promises, can't we? Don't regret the past. We can shut the door. How many of you have that experience? That's what it's like to enter the world of the Spirit. We need to live free of those limiting thoughts. At least some percentage of the time, yes?
Yep.
Okay? Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Understanding of what? Effectiveness at what?
Understanding of ourselves. Effective helping others.
He's right?
Yeah.
Sean didn't have an answer, but
Nope.
the answer for you are you. How many of you grew in understanding of yourself as sick rather than flawed in some other way?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you grew in understanding of others as being maybe more giving than you thought?
Mm-hmm.
How many of you grew in understanding of what people were talking about when they talked about God, when you felt the tangible flow of the Spirit through you?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
So we're going to grow in understanding of all those things. And then it says, and effectiveness. Sean said, of working with others. Any of you growing in an effectiveness of that?
Yes.
Not necessarily taking them through the steps, just getting along.
Yep.
Maybe you find you get along better with people than you once did.
Yep.
Okay? So this is not an overnight matter. Why did you tell us that?
Cautionary note.
Because we all want stuff right now.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And they want me to stay persistent. How many of you have been around here a minute and realized that what I thought was impossible was not impossible, but I had to be empowered to walk through a few things? I would have liked some of my circumstances to be erased, but my circumstances are what perfected the man I am now.
Yep.
So I had to walk through them.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so it should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I'm going to continue. When did I start?
Step 4.
John always does that. In step 4, I did learn to identify those selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What step 4 also showed me was that I was always good at spotting those things in you.
Yes.
And by this stage, I realized that what I'm spotting in you is simply reflecting what's going on in me.
That's right.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to get that out of the way in order to correctly assess the situation so I can see how to be maximum helpful. Yes? So they're going to give us some discipline now. When these crop up, notice the promise.
They will crop up.
Yeah, not if. On the offhand chance, should they crop up. When they crop up. we ask God and wants to remove them. We say, God, what do you say?
Power.
I will call that to your attention because if you have not encountered power in 2 and informed your decision with that power in 3, you will never get disciplined in this if you're thinking it's a light bulb or a chair or a group of drums or any of the bullshit I've heard of. You won't, because you won't try and improve consciousness with that worldly item. You will only try and improve consciousness with the spirit within you because you know it's tangible, because you know it's freedom.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
So we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. I call your attention to the steps. I know they're not on the wall here, but if you guys can recall them, do you see anywhere in the steps that suggest that I can help me?
Nope.
Because I lied and won if I can help me. Right? So it's always going to be somebody else whom God has led me to that I'm going to be able to help, but only when I surrender my judgments.
Right.
Yes?
Yep.
So when I'm asking God to remove from me the selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, what is it I'm asking Him to remove?
Myself.
My thoughts, right? There's another book that says, how can you see the speck in your brother's eye when you can't see the plank in your own eye?
Yep.
Better you should remove the plank from your eye. Your eyes can better see to help your brother.
Yep.
So the plank in my eye is my perspective about that situation. Right? Okay. So how many of you have heard of read the 12 step? Carry this message to other alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. And you wondered what principles, and then you read another book, and you thought it was honesty and willingness, and that book was written 15 years later.
Yep.
So it wasn't them. Right? That was written 15 years later and it wasn't collectively written. So the principles they're discussing are contained in that little sentence we just read. Shall we review?
Yeah.
Yep.
Watch, ask, discuss, turn.
Right.
Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask at once that they be removed. We discuss them with someone immediately, and then resolutely turn our thoughts to when we can. Watch, ask, discuss, turn. That's the principle I'm going to practice in all my prayers.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because they wouldn't tell us about a list that wasn't coming for 15 fucking years. Wouldn't be fair.
Right. True.
Sorry for the fucking. I did that. Okay. So then it says, love and tolerance of others is our code.
Yep.
Love what?
Love others, tolerate their behavior, because I'm tired of making amends.
Love the people, tolerate the symptoms of their malady. Yes? Yes. What is their malady? Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now they got some more promises for us, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. How many of you heard that message taught in our fellowship? Just keep fighting. You got this. Didn't you hear me one when I said I was powerless? I don't have it.
Right.
You
True.
better have it.
Right.
So I'm a train wreck. Yes?
Yeah. Signs on your forehead.
For by this time, sanity will have returned.
Yeah.
What am I fighting with? Why would a return to sanity be indicated by my not fighting?
Because I'm not drinking.
Well, that'd be something, but I'm also not fighting with my thoughts, which is all I ever fought with.
Right.
It takes no power to not do. You're never going to get power to not pick up, folks. I don't care how many people tell you that, because it takes no power to not do. You'll get power to deliver others from their suffering,
Yep.
but you won't get any power to not do.
Right.
That's a byproduct. The ability to not be tempted is a byproduct of spiritual fitness.
That's right.
Okay. I digress.
Yes.
So, goes on to tell us, if he's fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for this time sanity will return, will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. So how many of you have touched something hot? Did you move your hand quickly, or did you wait for someone to admonish you that that's going to be hot? So if I recoil as from a hot flame, I'm going to start reacting in a normal way, given the calamity that besets me once I start imbibing chemicals, yes? But that was not always my response, was it?
No.
Leave it in the fire.
I like to burn myself.
Yeah, this is good stuff, what?
Yeah.
Good ring camera. If tempted, we recoil from this from a hot flame, we react sanely and normally, and we will find this has happened automatically. So what does that indicate I had to do with it? It happened automatically. Nothing.
Right.
That's why they're going to say, we'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes, exclamation point. Why are they so surprised? Because they have tried and tried. No human power could relieve my alcoholism.
Right.
And all of a sudden, power's gone.
Yep.
Not the drunkenness, the ism.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yep.
That's the miracle of it. How many of you have concluded from wherever you were in your addiction to wherever you are that brought you here tonight that there had to have been something greater than you in play?
Absolutely.
So that when we speak miracles, we're talking about deliverances of which we are a part. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So then it says we're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, sacred, protected. That's the name of this meeting. I do that for my scientific-minded friends. How many of you get the idea of what it would feel like to be placed in a position of neutrality, safe, and protected? You ever wish someone could save you from yourself? Yes. Like a lot when I was in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, how many of you have found that you have the power to act kinder than you feel like acting? Now,
Yes.
at the cellular level, you are action, reaction. That's the physical laws. So, is it not evidence, if that's true, at your cellular level, your action, reaction, if you're not reacting the way you're feeling, is that not evidence that there's a power greater than you operating in you?
Yep.
Kind of hard to deny. Would it make sense to improve consciousness of that? Awareness to be aware of that power that's taking over and renewing my mind?
Yes.
And logically it would make sense, right? Okay. So, then it goes on to tell us that we have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. What's the problem?
Selfishness and self-centeredness.
Yeah, ultimately I had a fear problem. Yeah?
Yep.
And that fear problem could only be overcome by a substance called faith, which is the only substance in the known universe that can combat a control addiction, which is what I really had.
Yep.
I didn't have an addiction to alcohol or drugs or anything per se. That was a symptom of an underlying malady. The underlying malady was my control addiction.
Yep.
Any of you ever had that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Faith is the only solution. Yes?
Yeah.
Carry on. Because I haven't found it. All right. So the problem has been removed. So to some degree, you're less fearful. Is that true? Some percentage. How many of you have encountered situations after some time in recovery that would have scared you to death and it doesn't even cause you to flinch?
Yeah.
How many of you have had situations where everyone told you you should be angry about this and you just didn't care to be? Check it and see if y'all are noticing these tangible changes in your human nature made by this power that we Yeah? So, it says, it does not exist, the problem has been removed, it does not exist for us. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. So they're clearly talking now about the fear problem. Yes? That's our experience. You notice how they did not? They give us their opinion. They didn't tell me what my experience would be. They didn't tell me what your experience would be. They said, this is our experience. This state of being has happened to me. And they told us their demographic. From half of them were atheists or agnostics. The other half were believers dying in their alcoholism. And to a person, they agree on this experience. Pretty profound, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, it says, so long as that's how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So what's happening if I'm fighting with things?
I'm in a negative state.
I'm not in fit spiritual condition. I'm not awake. It doesn't matter how many digits are on your medallion.
Nice.
It matters. Do you still give the world power to affect how you think or feel? And if you do, that's not a problem except you're asleep.
Right. Unconscious.
Mm-hmm. So then it goes on to tell us it's easy to let up on the program, the spiritual program of action, and rest on our laurels. How many of you have been here long enough to realize how easy that is?
Yeah.
So they acknowledge that, and then they tell us something else that's kind of a no-brainer. We're headed for trouble if we do.
True.
How many of you have let up on your spiritual program of action? You notice how you started doing the steps in reverse?
Yeah.
In a hurry? For alcohol is so full. We're not cured of alcoholism. How come?
Because there's no known cure.
Because the state of body will never
They
change.
never tried to cure it, right?
No.
The doctor said, hey, the way you are, good idea for you to drink. So where are we changing to be up next week?
Yeah.
Right? That's not going to work for me. Abstinence is what I have to do, but I have no capacity for abstinence. So,
True.
I've got this thing. You got to understand it didn't cure my alcoholism. They simply removed my fear. They didn't. He did. But this process, the testimony, certainly led me there. Yes? Okay, so what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So what's a reprieve?
I'm not going to kill you today at noon.
Just day of execution. Yeah. Then it goes on and tells us every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. So did you know you can carry the vision of God's will into all your activities?
Yep.
So we would have to know that God was tangible, right? We would have to know that God communicates in dreams and visions and prophecies. Yes, we would have to know these things about this power, because why else would I know that I could carry the vision of God's will into all my activities? That's what they're witnessing to. How many of you figured that out? I may not always know God's will, but I know it's going to be absent, selfishness, dishonesty, resistance, and fear.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So what they did in order to carry the vision in all their activities is every time they were disturbed, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Now in 10-step discipline, they're acknowledging the delusion of a will apart from God. So it's in parentheses. You'll notice my 11th-step consciousness, there is no more delusion. It's just thy will. Because there really isn't my will and God's will. There's God's will and my disagreement with God's will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I won't teach you. I'll show you that by the time so it's the 11th step when I'm awake enough to carry the message. Yes? Okay. So these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. Why do they say that? Because my doubt goes with me constantly. Because my ability to be disturbed by things I see and hear in the world go with me constantly. My ability to believe a disappointment is the verdict when I've already been told the promise.
Yeah.
Any of you ever had that happen to you?
Sure.
Okay. So we can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It's the proper use of the will. Exercise my willpower Along what line? His will be done. His will be done. Whatever it is, right? Okay. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. When did they tell us that? What they tell us this expression came to them as in their encounter. Power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction. Much has already been said. They told us we feel the flow of the Spirit, right? They told us. So they did tell us much about that, right? They also told us much about them, didn't they? Half of them were atheists or agnostics. And someone had to call to their attention the tangible flow of the Spirit in them and say, that's the power we call it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. If we have carefully followed directions, we've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. So how many of you have felt the flow of His Spirit into you tonight, sitting here? So that's never happening from the podium. What's happening is the power of testimony is resonating within you and creating an experience called revelation. You're having revelatory power. Some of you can go back to places in your life where you experience this power and you start to see purpose in what you thought less purpose. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. To some extent, we become God conscious. So I'm not clear awake yet, but to some extent, I've become aware of that presence in my life. Yes?
Yes.
Aware that I'm aware. This is flowing through me, but it is not of me. Yes? How many of you have felt it flowing through you, but you weren't quite sure it wasn't of you, and so you thought you could invoke it on your own and found out? Where's my more churchy side? God has you pray for somebody and they have a profound experience, and you decide to anoint everybody, and it's not as profound.
That's right. Get it.
We're waiting for a cue. So some of you know what I'm talking about.
It can happen.
Okay. All right, so we've begun to develop this vital sixth sense. What do they mean by it? Necessary for life. My God consciousness is life. People that may not believe that, but that's when you wake up, you will.
Hey, you will.
If you're separate from God, we need to bury you. Right?
That's right.
It's true. I'm not saying if you're just asleep. I'm just saying if you're separate from Source. Anyway. So we must go further, and that means more action. These guys just won't let up. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. Why did they do that?
Because it works.
Well, if I'm doing all the talking and none of the hearing, that's about how I did a lot of really bad decision making.
Right.
And you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
So we shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Notice when they told us we had to carry the vision of God's will, and they told us we had to do that constantly, and now they're telling me the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pray constantly. Make sense?
Yeah.
It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. So what's the proper attitude? You have to go all the way back to your first step lesson. They told him that he was approached, and they told him about the spiritual principles, and they laid him at his feet, and he said he picked them up. This I did because I honestly wanted to and was willing to make the effort. So honestly wanting to and willing to make the effort is always the requirement of you to grow spiritually. Make sense? Why?
We were willing to
These
go.
guys tell us all about it in here. What's the first step in recovery? We learned we had to fully convict our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. Can't do that based on a lie.
Nope.
So I'm always back to, my tools. This idea that we don't return to a first step experiencing powerlessness throughout our life is silly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely silly. I'm powerless many times each day when I think they're causing how I think and feel.
That's right.
And until I awaken to the fact that you have no power to cause how I think and feel, my thoughts are causing how I think and feel. deal, and I need them redirected. Because right now, I think I'm sitting in a bucket of asshole. You ever been there? And if I'm there, I are one of them. Anyway, so it would be easy to be vague about this matter. How many of you would agree with it? It would be easy to be vague. How many of you heard people be vague? See how specific they are? Precise instructions of what they did, what they experienced as a result. What I was like, what happened, what I'm like now. They told us everything in past tense until right now. Now they're telling me what they're like now. It's present tense. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
The book's got all kinds of stuff. And it's not a book on how you should behave. Any more than the Bible is a book on how you should behave. If it's a book on if I will try and behave like that, it won't matter how you behave.
Right.
Okay. All right, so when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. How many of you would see a change in behavior there? How many of you retire at night and destructively review your day? Anybody? Nobody had a negative? So they're going to help us with constructive review. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? What am I looking for again? Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. Same thing, yes? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once?
Hate that one.
Every question mark you see at this stage is simply an opportunity to get introspective. Eyesight without insight, spiritual blindness. So every time they do that, it's an opportunity to go inward and see what's up. Yes?
Yeah.
And if you're sponsoring people, you'll probably have them do this with you. I always tell them, do this with me every day for 30 days. And I know two things. They'll either stop doing it long before 30 days, or they'll continue doing it long after 30 days. But I know if I got enough of you following me, I'll do it.
Right.
Yep.
Because we drive each other through our steps, hold each other accountable through the process. Yes? Okay? So then it says, were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others? Of what we could pack into the stream of life? Do you see how that would help guide and inform your attitudes if you gave yourself a reset before you just gave up and realized that you actually did have the answers in you, and you can't necessarily change the past, but if there's an amends to be made, you can make it, and you can own who you are today? How many of you got permission to be human today? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. How many of you, when you realize you made a mistake, just sat in your stinking thoughts and wouldn't talk to anyone? Now no one's help. See, if you just share it with somebody else and give them the dignity of helping you process through it, both of you are helped, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we got our tendency to go inward and isolate is not. How many of you have tried to isolate away because people were the problem? And we're all locked up by yourself, so that's a problem. So the problem wasn't ever there, it was in the mind, and I'm going to need a little help to unpack, yes? Okay. All right, so after making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So, if I'm going to ask for God's forgiveness, I must believe that I would receive something tangible, yes?
Yes.
That's also biblical, you guys. Some people talk about self-forgiveness and things like that. Truthfully, humans are terrible at forgiving themselves. It's a divine act. Now, the one in you may provide forgiveness, but the forgiveness in you that you move intangibly is for others. It just happens to free you from you. Make sense?
Yeah.
So, and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And then it says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. So if I'm doing that, and then immediately on awakening, what happened in the middle?
I slept.
Download.
So this may be during the day, an awakening during the day, but it may be as you're getting your disciplines, it's an end of the day thing. And I went to sleep and now I woke up. How many of you in your dream state received revelation?
Lots.
How many of you had to apply it pretty quick or you lost it?
Lots.
That's a brilliant idea. I'm going to remember it. Let me pee first.
And then you forget it.
Blank. Any of you ever had that? And I don't know about something in your psyche, learning something you know you needed to do. Okay? So as we consider our plans for the day before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So, asking God to direct our thinking. Those of you who don't like King James style prayer, God, please direct my thinking, especially as it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. You can use that anytime you're annoyed throughout the day.
Yeah.
And why might you want to do that?
Conscious contact.
Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. So if I employ my mental faculties, who are my mental faculties working for? They're working for me, and I'm working for God, because I got a new employer. Now, what they don't tell you in there is if I don't employ my mental faculties as a tool, my mental faculties will employ me as a tool.
Right?
Yes.
So my decision is either mine's a tool or I'm a tool of my mind.
Right.
And you know the difference?
Yeah.
How many of you have been driven by thoughts that told you weren't good enough? The people were cheating on you. They're going to fire you anyway. Just quit that fucking job.
No, Joe.
Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is clear of wrong motives. Our whole life is lived out between our ears, not on this plane, but on that plane.
Yeah.
So if we get our thought life clear, we live largely free, don't we? How many of you looked around the rooms as you've been here over the years and realized that everyone is aged with you?
Yeah.
That's because we live in our thought life. I can see your infirmities, but I'm good. Kevin, he doesn't age well. Kevin and I were college buddies, jumping out of windows together. We found ourselves survivors in recovery 45 years later. Can't believe you're alive, man. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. How many of you thought about your day and then thought? Okay. They're just talking about what they're like now. You get it? What we were like, that hopeless, what happened, and they took us through the process. Now they're telling us what we're like now.
Yeah.
So we may face indecision.
Yep.
We may not be able to determine which course to take. Does that ever happen to you?
Yep.
Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. So they didn't, not only did they tell you what they do, God inspired me, but it came to them as an intuitive thought or decision. So the whole prayer and meditation thing, I'm praying constantly, and the answers are coming to me as intuitive thoughts or decisions. It's not what I came up with, it's what came to me because I asked.
That's right.
Right.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
It's also true, right? We relax and take it easy, we don't struggle. Why?
Don't need to.
There is no reason to. However, they wouldn't have put it down if they hadn't spent a little time in struggle. So how many of you have asked? And then started coaching the creator of the universe on what it really looks like? So it kind of gets foggy if we've got an outcome in mind already. Yeah? Okay. So we're often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. So how many of you can relate to that? Like you started praying, you started meditating, you started hearing things, you started implementing what you were hearing, what you were seeing, and they worked out. And you're thinking, I wonder how long this can go.
Yeah.
Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So then it says, what used to be the hunch and the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. I emphasize gradually. They're telling you about a process that want our feet in motion and just keep walking, your mind will catch up.
Yep.
Move in faith. Yes?
Yep.
So everybody that's thinking that everyone's a spiritual giant around them, no. We all are full of doubts and fears. We don't know which course to take. Ask and walk. Ask and walk. Because that's how we do it. Make sense?
Yep.
And then it says, being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. Why do they tell us that?
Because it's a gross understatement.
Yeah, because I want to be inspired at all times. That's my nature. That's why I spend so much time with crap. I want to be inspired at all times.
Step on myself always.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. You want to, this particular to this crowd, want to hear an absurd action and idea?
Sure.
I met Joe Chapetta a few years ago. He told me about this crazy dream of putting 400 recently released returning citizens in one place in the middle of the city. He didn't have any money. He just got out of prison after a life sentence. He got, Holy Spirit said to me, you got to help this guy do this. That makes perfect sense. I immediately went to quit my job. He did. I didn't have a very good job, but it was a job.
Uh-huh.
And 2 years later, we bought this, and now you're all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's kept working and wrote letters to all you guys all those 2 years. So anyway, in my paper and all sorts of absurd actions and ideas, everyone thought it was absurd except the Holy Spirit didn't.
That's right.
Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration we come to rely upon. Why? Because I trust the Spirit more than I do my senses. Because I have developed my vital sixth sense. Anyone with me?
I see it.
You can give me the bad news, and okay, we'll file that under bad news, and we'll see how it turns out. And this is where the Spirit's leading. Yes, I know I got a lot of people that Kenny is a man of that kind of faith. I know a lot of you. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we've been shown all through the day what our next step is to be. So they really got me constantly praying now, right? I'm going to be asking what my next step is to be before I take my next step, but I know they're kind of going together now, yes?
Yep.
That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped.
Yep.
So how many of you get some confusion around what I should ask for and what I shouldn't ask for? Sometimes it's a little unclear in the early part of the journey. So in the early part of the journey, we want circumstances to be removed. As we grow, we realize that the circumstances in our path are our path, and they're preparing me for where I'm going.
Right.
So we don't ask for circumstances to be removed, we ask for power to move through.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
Deep.
And other than that, because as long as I get power to move through a difficult time, then it's going to be, other people are going to be helping.
Right.
To everyone, yes? Okay. So we ask especially for freedom from self-will, careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful to never pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. So with that explanation, can you easily see why?
Oh, yeah.
I would have asked for a lot of stuff to be removed that took things out of me, guilt, shame, remorse, doubt, self-loathing, pulled it out of me because I was empowered to walk through some difficult circumstances. Yes?
Yep.
So if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives and friends to join us in morning meditation. So how would I know if circumstances warrant?
You'll feel
You'd
it.
feel it.
That'd be a good clue. If they ask, what are you doing? Can I join you? Yeah. How many of you have not been asked, but you could sense somebody was curious, and you just said, hey, do you want me to show you what's up?
Yep.
And they just kind of slid in, you can Spirit gave you a nudge. So you'll have to be in tune now, right? Okay, if we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. We attend to what?
Morning devotion.
The morning devotion that my religious group requires, but I don't do that to supplant my AA practice. I do it in addition to my AA practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we've been discussing. There are many helpful books also, suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Notice the wording. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Didn't say be quick to see that they're right. How am I going to be quick to see where they're right? I might need to read their literature. Okay? I might need to do some other things in order to see that the principles they're discussing are no different than the principles I've been learning.
Right.
Yes?
Yep.
Right. Make use of what they offer. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. Did notice how they said we pause when agitated or doubtful? It didn't talk about if it happened, it didn't talk about when it happened. So how many of you have gone out through the day and found yourself agitated or doubtful?
Yep.
What did the doctor tell us about our condition if we're alcoholics?
That's right.
They're restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience that sense of ease and comfort.
Right.
So if I'm not awake, I'm going to start finding myself agitated or doubtful.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. And ask for the right thought or action. How many of you have found yourself having a thought come to you, even though it was foreign to you, and acting in that thought before you realize you're acting out of character, but in the right way?
Yeah.
One you've been made to do. It's probably what's happened. Yeah. Okay. We constantly remind ourselves that we're no longer running the show. There's that word constantly again.
It's all the time.
How many of you walked through the day and been disturbed by things you saw or heard, and then realized that nothing happens in God's world by mistake?
That's right.
I'm here to serve, not to criticize.
That's right.
We're here as coaches, not umpires. Strike! Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Remember I told you, by this time the delusion's gone. There's no parentheses, there's no not mine, thy will be done.
Yes.
Kind of cool, huh? They're getting me ready, having awakened to carry this message.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. How would you like to be in much danger of those things?
Yes.
Come on, many of you in here have made foolish decisions that cost you dearly. Yes?
Yes,
So to be in less danger of those things would be good. Okay? We become much more efficient. How many of you have figured that out? Even if you're brand new at this and you couldn't get up and participate in life, and all of a sudden you're doing your life things and you're going to meetings and you're starting to interact again and you're just starting to come out of yourself again, you're more efficient, yes? Even before you even know the process, you get more efficient because of the encounter that led you here. Yeah? We do not tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. So they're emphatic about this to a person is the experience, yes?
Yep.
We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. So what is the simple way we've just outlined? Pray, meditate, pray. Pause when agitated or doubtful. Pray, meditate, pray. What's contained in the prayer? Watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When they pop up and accept someone immediately turn across to someone we can help, right? All of it's contained in pray, meditate, pray. Pause when agitated or doubtful. Why do I pause when agitated or doubtful? Because I'm slumbering. I got no reason to be agitated or doubtful if I know who I am and whose I am.
That's right.
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 So I don't need to worry about how you're doing because that's going to be a full-time effort trying to discipline this thinker. Yes? Okay. But this is not all. There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. Where's that come from?
Another book.
Big book.
Look at James. Why is, they say this particularly for alcoholics, why is faith dead or faith without works dead for the alcoholic?
Show me, don't tell me.
We're kids, right? We're doubters by nature. I prove the power to me through me, and others can see it, and it's an observable act. I don't do anything for myself or by myself anymore, because as God moves through me, you can see it, and when you ask, and I honor my third step, then maybe you have an opportunity to come.
That's right.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right? So the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Thank you very much.